Hey everyone, welcome to this week's recap podcast for SNXweave. If you're a new listener, SNXweave is a grants-DAO initiative to improve communication and transparency across the synthetics ecosystem. We'll be giving quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the Spartan Council and core contributors. As we are closing in on the end of the epic, we'll be discussing more in depth the individual outlooks, voting trajectories, debating arguments, and overall values of various DAO members in order to help support well-informed voting around election time. In today's weekly recap episode, we're going to be discussing the momentum of several SIPs and some good news on the V2X and V3 fronts. So let's get started. Beginning with some positive news, Kane says the V2X scope is pretty clear now, with 2 phases of SIPs to be implemented. The resourcing has been lined up, and a roadmap was posted this past weekend that lists all the relevant SIPs, contextualizes them into categories, and splits them up into 2 phases. The first phase includes some minor improvements and several deprecations, while the second phase includes most of the work necessary for merging the debt pools. Kane says the second phase is anticipated to start sometime in the next month or so. The link to this roadmap is in our blog post this week. Check it out. On another positive note, Kane and SNXweave have been working on an initial V3 product scope and have been making good R&D progress there on both product and architecture for V3. The V3 engineering team has also been hard at work, and they're getting closer to an MVP implementation of the new architecture. This is likely to significantly improve the censorship resistance and permissionlessness of the protocol. Back to V2X, 3 SIPs and 2 SCCPs were voted on and approved this past week. SIP 155, to deprecate the SDAO, was approved with the entire council voting in favor. SIP 120, for the atomic exchange function, and SIP 169, to deprecate low-volume L1 synths, were also both approved with 5 votes in favor and none against. SCCP 135, to open account merging continuously, and SCCP 136, for increasing L2 inflationary awards to 50,000, were both approved with the entire council voting in favor of both. To aid in future voting, the potential development of a notification system was discussed to help increase voting participation by notifying council members when a proposal's voting period is coming to an end. This idea is being passed to the grants DAO. Now that SIP 155, to deprecate the SDAO, has been approved, Jordan says there should be more to share next week on the Core Contributor Committee SIP after he syncs up with those involved this week. As for the Governance V3 SIP, Kane thinks this SIP needs some more revision and will work on it with Andy and CT offline. It's possible that this SIP will get split into 2 separate ones because of how dense it is. The Quenta SIPs are also progressing well, as Kane has been working with Andrew in the background on these. SIP 177 will formalize the Quenta Treasury DAO, 178 will formalize the Quenta Interim Council, and 179 will formally have Quenta transferred from a synthetics project to an independent protocol. It's important to note, however, that the Quenta Treasury DAO and Interim Council will both be aligned with the existing synthetics epics. In both cases, there will be an open nomination and then a process to select members for the governance bodies of Quenta. For now, these will just be interim bodies that will last only until the Quenta token is released, after which Quenta token holders can directly engage in governance. These 3 SIPs are expected to be presented soon. Last week, we discussed synthetic futures and the alpha test that was working on OpenOVM. Kane says they are now working on getting it deployed on Kovan to run a 2-week incentivized testnet. After getting results from that, there will potentially be a second incentivized testnet based on any changes or feedback. This week, there are also 3 SIPs that are ready to be deployed. SIP 142, to deprecate Ether collateral loans, is ready to go out with the MRFAC release, as is the inflation diversion for L2 incentive SIP. The L2 bridge governance SIP is also ready to be deployed, however it will be going out with the release after WEZAM. Lastly, as an update to last week's link wrapper discussion, this SIP was moved to rejected and will be replaced by a future wrapper factory SIP that will serve as a more generalized and diverse wrapper contract. This is good news, as it will mean only a variable change when wrapping new tokens in the future, rather than having to create an entirely new contract each time. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.